Police officers notice a black girl and decide to follow her, suspecting the worst. They are ready to catch her in the act, but what they find at the end of the trail shocks them. Subscribe and tell me where you're watching this video from. The city pulsed with restless energy, a mosaic of towering glass buildings and shadowed alleyways. Neon signs flickered in the evening haze, and the muffled symphony of car horns, distant sirens, and hurried footsteps filled the air. Pedestrians rushed past each other with barely a glance, faces lit by the cold glow of their phones. Luxury stores displayed their treasures behind pristine windows. But just a few blocks away, the glittering facade crumbled into cracked sidewalks, shuttered shops, and graffiti-stained walls. It was a city of contrasts, wealth and poverty, hope and despair, all colliding beneath the same sprawling sky. Detective Tom Harper sat behind the wheel of the unmarked cruiser, his rough hands gripping the steering wheel with the ease of long habit. His sharp eyes scanned the bustling scene through the windshield, every flicker of movement feeding his instinct honed by 20 years on the force. He was a man who trusted patterns, the way people moved, their eyes, their body language. It rarely lied to him. Next to him, Detective Jackson Reed stirred his coffee, the rich, bitter aroma filling the car. He was younger by over a decade, with a calm, attentive demeanor that often softened the edge of Harper's no-nonsense approach. The radio crackled to life, breaking the rhythm of the street noise. Unit 3-5, we have a report from Westbrook Mall. Possible theft or loitering, suspect described as a young black female, approximately 10 years old, seen entering and exiting the same store multiple times without purchasing, requesting plainclothes surveillance. Tom's brow furrowed as he glanced at Jackson. A kid? Jackson, mid-sip, lowered his cup. Maybe she's lost or waiting for someone. Tom's voice was clipped. Or casing the place for a quick grab. You'd be surprised how many they recruit young these days. Jackson gave him a sideways look but said nothing. Harper's instincts had proven right more times than he cared to count, but something about pursuing a child felt wrong. Still, he understood the protocol. Observe first, intervene if necessary. The cruiser glided smoothly into the Westbrook Mall lot, settling into an inconspicuous corner with a clear line of sight to the main entrance. Through the wide glass doors, the bustling crowd streamed in and out, a flow of shoppers carrying bags from designer outlets, teenagers laughing in clusters, parents corralling excited toddlers. And then they saw her. The girl emerged from the store, her frame small and fragile beneath an oversized faded jacket. Her hair was pulled into two neat pigtails, and a worn-out backpack sagged on her narrow shoulders. She clutched a small paper bag tightly, her eyes darting nervously as if expecting someone to stop her. For a moment, she hesitated on the curb, then, with a quick glance around, she began walking away from the mall. "That her?" Jackson asked, already knowing the answer. "Matches the description," Tom replied. His hand hovered near the radio, but he didn't call it in. Not yet. The girl's behavior puzzled him. She hadn't run. She hadn't tried to conceal anything. There was no sign of a lookout or accomplice. If she was up to something, she was either very good or very desperate. "Let's follow," Tom said, easing the car into motion. The girl moved quickly, but without panic, her steps purposeful. She turned onto the main road, weaving through the evening foot traffic. She crossed at the lights, her eyes flicking from side to side, cautious but not reckless. She wasn't running from anyone. She was running to somewhere. The further she walked, the more the city changed. The polished storefronts and branded banners faded into discount stores, pawn shops, and boarded-up cafes. Neon lights gave way to flickering street lamps. The air grew thick with the mingled scents of fried food, exhaust, and something more sour. Decay beneath the city's glossy surface. "She's heading into Lower Town," Jackson murmured. The district was notorious. Crumbling buildings, frequent busts, and a population the system had long since failed. Tom's grip on the wheel tightened. Nothing good's waiting for her there. The girl slipped through a chain-link fence where a section had been torn away, leading into a lot filled with cracked pavement and weeds. Beyond it stood a building, 3 stories of boarded windows and peeling paint. Its once grand facade now a monument to neglect, the old Fairfax Apartments. Tom recognized it from past calls, squatters, drug busts, domestic disturbances. "Looks like we found her hideout," he muttered. "Tom," Jackson said, his voice weighted with hesitation, "she's a kid. We don't know what this is." Tom's eyes stayed on the building. "I know what this place is. Kids don't come here for anything good." The girl paused at the entrance, digging into her backpack. She pulled out a tarnished key and struggled with the stiff lock, her small frame straining as she pushed the door open and disappeared inside. Tom put the car in park. "We can't leave it at this." Jackson's voice was firm but even. "We don't have probable cause. She hasn't done anything." Tom's jaw worked, and for a second his fingers flexed on the wheel. "My gut says something's wrong. You want to wait for it to get worse before we step in?" Jackson met his gaze. The unspoken tension between them, protocol against instinct, restraint against action, crackled in the air. Finally, Jackson nodded. "Let's check it out, carefully." The building swallowed them in shadow, the air thick with mildew and a faint metallic tang. The soft creak of warped floorboards under their boots was the only sound as they moved through the dim, peeling corridor. The silence felt unnatural, as if the building itself was holding its breath. Faintly, from above, they heard it, a muffled voice, small and uncertain, followed by the faint rustle of movement. Children. They reached the second floor, where a single strip of light bled from beneath a crooked door. At the same moment, they saw her, the girl on her tiptoes, trying to fit the ancient key into the lock with trembling hands. Her eyes met theirs, wide with sudden terror. She froze, her whole body taut with panic. Her voice broke, thin and desperate. "I didn't steal anything, I swear." The paper bag slipped from her hand, landing with a soft crinkle on the floor. From its torn opening spilled the contents: 2 sandwiches, a bottle of juice, and a small pack of crackers. The moment stretched, her fear, their confusion, and the raw edge of something unspoken. The girl's voice, trembling but defiant, "Please, don't take me away." Jackson felt his pulse slow, the chaos distilling into something painfully clear. "Tom," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper, "I don't think we're here for what we thought." Tom's gaze, hard and weathered from years of expecting the worst, wavered as something unfamiliar tugged beneath his ribs. The girl's fingers trembled on the key. The door, worn and battered, hung half ajar, and beyond it, something waited, an answer neither of them could have predicted. The air felt thick with the weight of a truth just beyond reach. Tom's voice, low and rough, "Let's see what's going on." With a soft creak, the door opened. The shadows inside shifted, and the world they thought they knew began to unravel. The musty air of the building lingered on their skin as they stepped further inside. The dim hallway stretched before them, lined with peeling wallpaper and doors that seemed long abandoned. The silence was heavy, broken only by the faint scuff of their boots on the warped floorboards. Somewhere in the distance, a pipe groaned, and a slow drip echoed like a heartbeat through the hollow walls. The girl stood frozen, her back pressed against the chipped frame of the doorway, her chest rising and falling in quick, shallow breaths. She clutched the worn straps of her backpack, her knuckles white. The paper bag with the scattered food lay at her feet, a pitiful offering in the face of her terror. Her eyes flicked between them, wide and shimmering, her body tense as if ready to bolt. Neither officer moved. Tom's voice, low and measured, broke the silence. "Hey, it's okay. We're not here to hurt you." The girl's lips parted, but no sound came out. Instead, her gaze darted to the darkened space behind her, where the faintest rustle hinted at unseen company. The shift was so subtle, but it didn't escape Tom's eyes. He felt it in his gut. This wasn't just about her. A soft, small cough came from inside the room. The girl's body stiffened further. Her voice, a whisper barely audible, cracked with fear. "Please, don't." But Tom's instinct took over. His gaze met Jackson's, and in that unspoken second they both knew. This was bigger than a frightened child. Tom's hand moved to the door, slow but firm, and he pushed it open. The hinges, corroded with time, groaned in protest as the door swung wide. The room beyond was a skeleton of what had once been an apartment. The wallpaper had rotted into strips. The ceiling bore the scars of water damage, and the floor was a patchwork of warped boards. The only light seeped through a gap where a curtain had once been, casting pale beams across the wreckage. And then they saw them. Children. 5 of them. All younger than the girl, huddled in a corner near a threadbare mattress. Their faces were thin, smudged with dirt, their clothes ragged and ill-fitting. Their eyes, round, glassy, and wide with fear, locked onto the officers with a silent, primal plea. The oldest child, a boy with matted hair and hollow cheeks, moved instinctively in front of the others, his body shielding them. His voice, hoarse but defiant, scraped through the silence. "Leave us alone!" Tom froze. The hard edge of his training, his years of anticipating the worst, collided with the raw scene before him. These weren't criminals, they were survivors. The girl, her voice trembling but urgent, broke through the thick tension. "Please, don't call anyone. Don't take them. I'm just trying to help." Her words hung between them, fragile and exposed. Jackson, his heart pounding, lowered his stance, his voice soft but firm. "What's your name?" A long pause. The girl's throat bobbed as she swallowed hard. "Lily." Tom's voice, rougher but steady, followed. "And these kids?" Lily's eyes flicked to them, her chin trembling. They're like me. They don't have anywhere to go. I found them. I couldn't leave them alone." The room felt too small to hold the weight of what she was saying. Jackson's gaze swept the apartment. The pile of scavenged blankets, the empty cans lined neatly against the wall, the cracked bowl of water beside the mattress. The makeshift attempts of a child trying to build a shelter against a world too cruel for her age. Tom's eyes landed on the boy at the front. His arms, bony and too thin for his age, bore the purple ghosts of bruises. A fight? No, not from another child. Something worse. The pieces began to fall into place, and the story, unspoken but searing, formed in the silence. Lily's voice, a whisper cracked with exhaustion and fear. I used all I had to buy them food today. I didn't steal, I swear. But if you call someone, they'll take us all, split us up." Her voice broke then, the veneer of bravery cracking as tears welled in her eyes. "I can't let them take us away." Tom felt the air in his lungs grow heavy. He had seen desperation before, On addicts, on criminals, on parents clinging to hope. But never like this. Never wrapped in pigtails and a child's trembling voice. Jackson's voice was low, but weighted with certainty. "We're not here to tear you apart, Lily." His eyes, soft but unyielding, found hers. "We're here now, and you don't have to do this alone." But Lily's body stayed taut with the sharp-edged instinct of a child who had learned that promises often broke worse than bones. Her voice was tight, pleading, "Please, don't call anyone. Please." The other children clung to one another, their small faces barely peeking from behind the boy's frail frame. Tom's jaw clenched, his throat thick as he spoke through the sudden weight in his chest. "We're not making any calls. Not until we understand what's really going on." The tension, thin as glass, shuddered, but it did not break. Lily's eyes, still damp, searched his face. She saw something there. Something different from the cold glare she had grown used to. She didn't trust it, not yet, but she didn't run either. Minutes passed like hours until finally her small fingers eased from their tight grip on her backpack. She shifted, and the boy at the front, as if reading something in her posture, eased just slightly to the side. Tom and Jackson took it as the only invitation they would get. Jackson stepped forward first, his eyes on the children, his voice low and warm. "Anyone hurt?" The boy, older than the rest but still heartbreakingly young, shook his head once, but Jackson caught the flicker of his eyes toward the smallest child, a little girl curled tight against the mattress. He knelt, careful not to tower over them. "Is she sick?" Lily's voice, thin and tight. "She hasn't eaten. Not for 2 days. I was trying." Tom was already reaching for his radio, but his fingers stopped short, brushing the cool plastic. He felt the air shift, Lily's eyes burning into him with raw panic. Her lips parted, and her whole body tensed as if she was ready to fight. But he didn't press the button. Instead, his voice, gravel against stone, but somehow softer. "Jackson, get the first aid kit, and whatever snacks we've got left." Jackson moved instantly, retreating to the hall and returning with the worn med pack and a crumpled bag of granola bars from the glove compartment. He set them down without a word and backed off. The children didn't move. Only when Lily, slow and cautious, reached out to tear open a wrapper did the smallest child stir, her tiny fingers fumbling toward the food. A brittle crack echoed through the room as the granola bar snapped in half. Lily placed one piece in the girl's palm and kept the other for herself. Only after the child's small, shaking hands brought it to her lips did Lily's chest release a slow, shuddering breath. Tom felt something shift, like the ground beneath him had moved, and everything he knew had tilted slightly off its axis. This wasn't a crime scene. It was a sanctuary, fractured, starved, and desperate, but a sanctuary nonetheless. And they had stepped into it with guns and suspicion. Jackson broke the silence, his voice a quiet tremor. "What's the story, Lily?" Lily's eyes, still wary but no longer hard, flicked towards the children, then back. Her voice, soft and raw, carried the weight of a truth no child should bear. "My parents died last year. I was living with my grandma, but..." Her voice hitched. "She got real sick. She's in the hospital. I didn't know what else to do. I couldn't leave them." She swallowed, her voice barely holding. "They've been on the streets. I found them. No one cares. No one looks for kids like us. We just disappear." Her last words, "we just disappear," hit like a punch to the ribs. Tom's mouth felt dry. "You've been taking care of them on your own?" Lily's chin lifted, her voice trembling but fierce. "No one else would." A silence heavier than any siren or alarm filled the room. Then Tom, his voice rough and frayed. "We're not here to take you apart." His eyes, storm-dark but honest. "But we can't leave it like this." Lily's lips pressed tight, but something in her gaze cracked, like the first fracture in a dam too long holding back the flood. Jackson's voice, steady and warm, the promise in his tone a lifeline. "You don't have to trust us, but let us help. Just let us help." The room held its breath, and then, finally, Lily's small, exhausted body gave the tiniest trembling nod. Tom's voice, low but certain. "We're staying." No sirens, no cuffs, just 2 officers, 6 children, and a room thick with the brittle, flickering ember of something Lily hadn't felt in a very long time. Hope. And beyond the broken windows, the night stretched on, dark, wide, and watching. But for the first time, she wasn't holding it back alone. The door behind them closed, soft and final. The world outside could wait. Inside, something else had just begun. The night deepened around the decaying walls of the Fairfax apartments, but inside the air felt thicker than the shadows. The soft hum of the city outside was distant, muffled by the worn-out bricks that had seen better days. The room remained still, heavy with exhaustion and uncertainty. The children's eyes, wide and guarded, followed every twitch, every shift of the officers' bodies, their fear still a living, breathing thing. Lily stood at the fragile line between trust and instinct, her small frame tense, ready to shield the younger ones with nothing but her will. Her eyes, red-rimmed and glistening from exhaustion and tears, never left the 2 men before her. Jackson moved first. His hands, slow and open, placed the first aid kit on the floor. "It's here if you need it," he said simply, his voice a low murmur meant to soothe, not command. Lily's gaze flicked to the kit, then back to him, wary. "Why are you still here?" The question carried layers of meaning. Why hadn't they called someone? Why hadn't they dragged her away? Why hadn't they broken what little she had left? Tom's voice came, rough but even. "Because leaving you here like this would be wrong." His eyes, shadowed with years of seeing too much, met hers. "You don't deserve to face this alone." Lily's lip trembled, but she pressed it hard between her teeth, fighting to hold herself together. The smallest child, her name, as Lily would later say, was Maya, curled weakly on the mattress, the half-eaten granola bar still clutched in her tiny fist. Her breathing was shallow, her skin pale beneath a smudge of dirt. Lily knelt beside her, brushing a gentle hand over the girl's damp forehead. "She's been sick," Lily said softly, her voice thin with helplessness. "I tried to get her medicine, but—" Her fingers curled against the mattress, her voice trailing into the heavy silence. Jackson's eyes softened. "She needs help, Lily." "I know," Lily snapped, the crack in her voice betraying the fear beneath her anger. "But if I let you call someone, they'll take her. They'll take all of us. Foster homes, shelters, we'll be gone." Her voice dropped to a whisper, hoarse and raw. "We'll lose each other." The other children pressed closer together at her words, their silent faces painted with the same unspoken terror. Tom exhaled slowly, the weight of her fear sinking deep. He had seen the system fail before, too many times. He knew Lily's fear wasn't unfounded. Kids slipped through the cracks all the time, but he also knew that leaving them here, like this, was a slow kind of dying. Jackson's voice, soft but insistent, broke the silence. "We won't let that happen." Lily's eyes flashed, a fire igniting beneath the tears. "You can't promise that," she spat, her voice cracking. "You're cops. You say things and then it's out of your hands." Tom felt the sharp edge of her words carved through his chest. She was right. There were rules, protocols, things they couldn't control. But at this moment, in this room, he felt something shift inside him. Rules had never stopped him from doing what was right. "We don't make empty promises," Tom said, his voice low, weighted with something unshakable. "But I swear to you, we'll find a way to help you, without tearing you apart." The room went still, the air between them taut as wire. Finally, Lily's small shoulders, tight with the unbearable strain of holding the world alone, slumped. She didn't trust them. Not yet. But she was losing the strength to fight. "She needs medicine," Lily whispered, her voice barely a breath. "And we need food. They're hungry all the time." Tom's jaw set, his decision immediate. "Then let's fix that, right now." Jackson nodded and stood. "I'll go." Lily's head snapped up. "No!" The panic flared instantly. "Don't bring anyone else here." Jackson met her gaze steadily. "I'm not calling anyone, just going to get food. Medicine, that's all." Her lips pressed tight, but after a moment she gave a small, jerking nod. "Okay," she whispered, the word squeezed out like it hurt. Without another word, Jackson slipped out the door, his footsteps soft but certain. The silence that followed felt vast, the air brittle. Tom remained, his tall figure a still presence in the broken room. He didn't speak, didn't move, just stayed. Minutes passed like hours. Finally, Lily's voice broke the silence, thin and brittle. "You'll tell me the truth?" Tom's eyes, dark and steady, found hers. "Always." Her fingers twisted in the frayed fabric of her jeans. She hesitated. Then the dam cracked, and the truth poured out. "My mom and dad," her voice wavered, each word like glass beneath her tongue. "They died last year. Drunk driver. It was just me and Grandma after that." She paused, swallowing a shuddering breath. "Grandma tried. She did. But then she got sick. Real bad. She collapsed a month ago. Ambulance took her. I haven't seen her since. They said she's still alive. But I don't know anything else. Nobody tells me anything." Her voice turned hollow. "I was supposed to go to a shelter, but I didn't. I ran." Tom's voice was gentle but steady. "And you found them?" Her eyes flicked to the children, soft with something fragile and fierce. "Yeah, Maya. I found her first. Alone. She didn't even talk for days." She swallowed hard. "The others, too. Nobody cared they were missing. Nobody was looking. So, I stayed." Tom's throat was tight. "You've been taking care of them. By yourself." Her chin lifted, defiance sparking beneath her exhaustion. "Who else would?" The raw simplicity of her answer hit like a blow. Before Tom could answer, soft footsteps returned, and Jackson reappeared, carrying 2 paper bags and a small plastic one. The scent of fresh bread, apples, and soup containers cut through the sour air. He set them down, then, from the smaller bag, pulled out a bottle of children's fever medicine and a fresh bottle of water. Lily's eyes widened, her voice a thin thread. You really—" Jackson smiled softly. "No promises, just action." For the first time, Lily's mask cracked fully, and something raw slipped through. Relief, sharp and painful. Her knees buckled, and for a breathless second she swayed. Then Tom was there, steady hands catching her before she could hit the floor. Her voice, muffled against his jacket, broke with exhaustion. I can't keep doing this." Tom's voice, gruff but warm. "You're not alone anymore, kid." They laid Maya carefully on the mattress, and Jackson opened the medicine, measuring a small dose. Lily's fingers brushed through Maya's curls as the little girl swallowed the sweet syrup with a weak, fluttering breath. The other children, drawn by the scent of food, crept closer. Jackson opened a soup container, and the warm, rich aroma made their hollow eyes spark with hunger. "Eat," he said simply. They didn't wait. Small hands reached, careful and desperate, and the room was filled with the soft, broken sounds of chewing and shallow sips. Tom watched them. Every hollow face, every too-thin limb, and every flicker of life that returned with each bite. His heart, worn from decades of hard choices, felt raw and exposed. He looked at Jackson. "We can't leave it like this." Jackson's eyes, soft but certain, met his. "We won't." Tom's voice hard with resolve. "No calls, no system, not until we know they're safe." Jackson's reply, low and firm, "Agreed." And in that moment, without paperwork, without orders, they made a decision. This wasn't a case. This was a fight. For them, for her, for what was right. The night pressed against the windows, cold and vast. But inside, in the brittle, broken room, a flicker of warmth began to bloom. Not a rescue, a promise. They would not lose her. They would not lose any of them. Not to the streets, not to the cracks. Not this time. The first light of dawn crept through the grimy windows of the Fairfax apartments, casting a pale, fragile glow over the room. The air was thick with the mingled scents of soup, stale wood, and something warmer. Hope, still too fresh to be certain, but present nonetheless. The children, their bellies no longer hollow, had curled together in a fragile huddle on the mattress and floor, their soft, rhythmic breaths the only sound in the stillness. The smallest, Maya, now slept more peacefully, her forehead no longer burning with fever. Beside her, Lily sat cross-legged, her eyes shadowed with exhaustion but unclosing, watchful, protective, unwilling to surrender to rest. Tom and Jackson, leaning against a cracked wall, watched the scene in silence. The previous night had stripped something from them. Layers of detachment built through years of hard calls and harder choices. Tom's face, lined and weathered, was tight with a rare tension, his arms folded across his chest. Jackson, his younger features drawn but determined, glanced sideways at his partner. "We can't leave them like this," Jackson said softly, his voice rough from the weight of the night. Tom's jaw shifted. "I know." His voice was low, gravel thickened by something he rarely let show. "But if we call it in, they'll be scattered. She knows it. We know it." Jackson's gaze returned to the children. "Then we don't let that happen." His voice carried no question, only certainty. "We find another way." Lily's voice, worn thin but sharp with suspicion, sliced through the air. "You're still here." She didn't move, her eyes fixed on them like a cornered animal testing the edge of a cage. Tom's reply came, steady and rough. "Yeah, we are." He pushed off the wall, his boots scuffing against the warped floorboards. "And we're not going anywhere." Lily's fingers curled tightly in the fabric of Maya's shirt, her lips pressed to a pale line. "They always say that, right before everything falls apart." Jackson's voice, softer but firm, answered, "We're not them." The silence between them stretched, taut and trembling, but this time something shifted. Lily's shoulders, tense and sharp with defiance, dropped just a fraction. It wasn't trust, but it was the absence of fight. A ceasefire in a war she'd fought alone for far too long. The first move came from Jackson. "Lily, I know you're afraid, but your grandma, she's still out there and she needs to know you're okay." He paused, his voice threading careful through the air. "Let us find her." Lily's eyes snapped to his, flaring with a panic edged in pain. "No, if you find her, you'll call them. You'll make us go." Tom cut in, his voice rough but holding something solid beneath the grit. "No calls, no system, just us." He met her stare unflinching. "You've been fighting alone. Now let us fight with you." The room was silent, the children's breath the only rhythm. Then, slowly, with a voice so small it barely seemed to carry, Lily whispered, "Her name is Margaret Brooks. She's at St. Vincent's. Or, she was." Her voice cracked on the last word, the uncertainty slicing deeper than she could bear. Jackson didn't wait. He nodded once and stepped out into the hall, phone already in hand. The door closed softly behind him, leaving Tom and Lily in the fragile silence. Tom stayed where he was, a mountain of a man made still, his voice coming low and steady. "You did the right thing." Lily's reply was a bare whisper. "I don't know what that is anymore." Minutes passed like hours, and then the door opened and Jackson was there, his eyes searching for Lily instantly. "She's alive," he said, his voice tight but sure. "Still at St. Vincent's. She's stable, and—" he paused, his voice softening. "She's been asking about you." Lily's breath hitched, her face crumbling as something cracked wide inside her. Her voice, hoarse and trembling, broke out. She's okay?" Jackson nodded, a small, certain gesture. "She's been holding on. For you." The dam inside Lily shattered. Her face folded, her body trembling with the force of tears that had been caged for far too long. She buried her face in her knees, her shoulders shaking with the flood of everything: fear, grief, relief, years of being small and strong and alone, breaking and breaking and breaking at last. And Tom was there. He didn't touch her. He didn't need to. But his voice came a rough whisper through the storm. "You did it, kid. You kept them safe. You kept her in your heart. And now we'll keep you safe. All of you." The morning passed in something like peace, fragile but real. The children ate again, this time slower, their eyes clearer. Lily, her face still streaked with the tracks of tears, remained close to Maya, but something in her posture had softened. The invisible armor, worn threadbare from battle, had cracked, but the world outside hadn't stopped. And they knew it would come knocking. Jackson was the first to break the inevitable silence. "Tom." Tom's gaze, sharp and knowing, met his. "I know." His voice was low, filled with the hard edge of decisions that had no perfect answers. "We can't hide this forever." Lily's head snapped up, her body already pulling tight with dread. "You said—" Tom's voice, firm but steady, cut through. "We keep our word. We won't let them tear you apart. But to make sure of that, we have to act first, not them." Jackson's voice joined, warm but serious. "We're not going through the system. We're going around it." Confusion flickered in Lily's tired eyes. What does that mean?" Tom's mouth pressed into a line, his voice low and certain. "It means we call people who fix things, not break them." Within the hour, the first call was made, to a local shelter director, one Jackson knew personally, a woman who spent her career keeping siblings together when the system tried to scatter them. The second call, more cautious, was to a contact in child services, one of the few who fought against the machine from within. No official reports, just words between people who understood what was right. Then came the hardest part. The call to the hospital, arrangements, plans, promises, quiet, human ones, that no child would vanish into the cracks. By the time the sun tipped toward the west, the world outside had shifted, and so had the world inside. The arrival at St. Vincent's was swift but careful. No sirens, no uniforms, just Jackson, Tom, and Lily, her heart pounding so hard it shook through her ribs. The hospital, with its endless white, felt too large, too cold. But at the end of a hallway, in a room where time had worn thin, lay everything she had fought for. The door opened. The woman on the bed, frail, gray, but with eyes that sparked instantly, saw her. And Lily saw her back. "Grandma!" The word was broken, shattered with every ounce of love and pain and longing. And then she was there, and arms, thinner than she remembered but warm, so warm, enclosed her, shaking with the force of a love that had waited far too long. "Oh, my sweet girl." Her grandmother's voice, thin and tired but whole, was the safest sound Lily had ever known. "You're here. You're here." Lily's voice, barely a whisper through the sobs. "I didn't leave you. I didn't. I—" Margaret Brooks, weak but unbroken, cupped her granddaughter's face. "No, my love. You saved them. You saved everything." Tom and Jackson stood just beyond the door, their eyes heavy with the weight of what they had witnessed. They didn't step forward. This moment wasn't theirs. But as Lily, shaken and whole, clung to her grandmother's frail hands, Tom felt something inside him settle. Something that had been jagged and raw for too long. It was Jackson who spoke, his voice a low murmur. "You did it." Tom's voice, rough but certain, answered, "No, she did." The days that followed didn't erase the struggle, but they changed the course. The shelter, the resources, and the promises, real ones, held. The children stayed together. And when Lily and her grandmother were strong enough, they stayed together too. No sirens, no handcuffs, no scattering into the cracks. Only something that, at long last, felt like a future. Weeks later, the knock came. Not on a door, but on a familiar station desk. A small hand, warm and worn, pressing a folded piece of paper into Tom Harper's calloused palm. A drawing. Simple, childlike. 6 children, an old woman, 2 officers. Above them, scrawled in shaky, uncertain letters, just 3 words. "My heroes." "Always." Tom stared at it, his throat thick, his chest tight. Beside him, Jackson's voice came soft. "She saw us." Tom's voice a whisper, rough and raw from everything they had lived. "No, she showed us." The paper, thin and fragile, felt heavier than anything Tom had ever carried. And, for the first time in too long, he didn't feel the weight as a burden. He felt it as purpose. Because in a world so often carved by division, by fear, by prejudice, by doubt, they had found something that could never be taken. Not a case, not a headline, a life, many lives. And in that moment, Tom knew. This was why. This was everything. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more powerful and meaningful stories. Share this video with your friends to spread the message of hope and compassion. And if you want to see more, check out our other videos. You might find your next favorite story. Stay with us for more.